And welcome to Inside Government for the fall 2017 semester here at Cayuga Community College. This is a show that is broadcast on Spectrum Communications, as well as Verizon Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Authority, ARMA, as well as Win 89, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We had hoped to bring you the candidates for the 5th Legislative District tonight to talk about the issues and have a forum as we normally plan. Unfortunately, we will not be having that forum tonight. We will be back to our forum schedule on Thursday, and we'll talk about what we have for the rest of the month, ending up with our City Council forum on Halloween. Tonight, though, we are going to have a conversation about the 9th Legislative District. That includes Moravia, Niles, Sempronius in that district, as well as Summer Hill. We had hoped to bring both candidates here, but Charles Ripley, who is on the Republican and Conservative lines, declined our invitation through an intermediary. His opponent, Kathleen GORR, agreed to participate. And as our past practice, as we've used for candidates for Congress and for the New York State Senate, we offer time to the candidates who agree to participate, even if their opponent does not agree to participate. So we are going to have a 30-minute one-on-one with her today to talk about the issues that are facing that district as well as the county. This seat is now being vacated by Republican Terrence Baxter, who declined to run for a second term. The current legislature of 15 members is divided 8 Democrats and 6 Republicans, with 1 independent. With more than half of the legislature up this fall, this could flip the legislature again from Democratic control to Republican control, which it had been for the last 20+ years. So, with all that being said, we'd like to welcome you to Inside Government.
Thank you, Guy.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So, why are you running?
First of all, let me say I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. We want to have candidates out here to get the word out.
I'm running because I think this would be an opportunity to make some very beneficial changes. And anytime you have a government position like county legislature, you have the potential for making changes, making things better. I moved here 11 years ago to retire with my husband, who also retired, and because we love this area and we still love it.
So you are originally from Rochester and you moved out to Chicago?
Yes. And
you practiced law out there?
I did.
And you're not practicing law in New York?
No. I do arbitrations.
You do arbitration. And your husband is a adjunct professor at Wells?
That's correct.
And taught here at Cayuga?
Yes, he did.
Oh, so,
yes.
So a couple of just general questions. Any idea why Mr. Baxter is not running for re-election?
I believe he's running as supervisor in
giving
Moravia.
one.
Yeah.
If he had run for re-election, would you have opposed him?
I never gave it a thought, frankly.
Okay.
I just kind of took it the way it was. So I've never really considered that.
Okay. And I know you sit on some boards, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but have you ever run for a government office before?
Yes.
What did you run for?
I ran for Niles Town Board. I sort of did it on my own. I lost by 8 votes.
So you still got that flavor in your mouth. How long ago was that?
That was about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've never held elective office, but you do serve on the Water Quality Management Board?
That's right. I represent the Skaneateles Lake Association on that board, and but I'm a voting member, and it's been a very, very good experience.
So voters in your district may not pay attention to this. Some will. Oddly enough, your district has 2 lakes abutting it, 2 large bodies of water. Niles has not only Owasco Lake on one side of it, but it has Skaneateles on the other.
That's
you go
right.
past the Mandana and so you're in 2 watersheds.
I am.
And that district would represent that.
Yes.
And we'll have, believe it or not, we will have some lake questions for you in a minute or two. So you've lived in the district about 11 years?
Yes.
And why Cayuga County?
Well, we really wanted to choose a beautiful area. I was familiar with upstate New York. My husband was not. We drove all around. We drove all around the lakes,
And we just happened to find the right place in the right setting where we are now in Niles.
And have you been involved in Democratic Party politics in Cayuga County before? Other than were you running as an endorsed candidate for the Niles Town Board?
I don't think I ever got the endorsement.
Okay.
I ran on the Democratic line.
Okay.
So, and I was not particularly involved with the Democratic Party.
Okay.
Yeah.
What drove you to this? Are there some burning big issues facing the county that you think need to get more attention?
Yes. Water, which, as you say, we'll come to. That's very important. It's been very, very important lately. The roads. We live off of 41A. Trash trucks go by our house all the time. They tear up the roads. And the state has chosen not to fix all of 41A. It fixed the area near us, finally. And I think that's just wrong.
So let's talk about that specifically. We'll come back to the general items. So you are on 3 lines. You are on the Democratic line, the Independence Party line.
Correct.
And then you also back in the, well, I guess it's still fall, but this year, later in the campaign, got on the Fix Our Roads party line. That's your independent designation.
That's right. I got petitions to form a party called Fix Our Roads.
Are you the only candidate on that
I
particular
am.
line? Okay.
I'm the only person in the party.
So if somebody can't bring themselves to vote on the Democratic or Independent side, they have an alternative.
They do.
Okay. So the big issue right now, and we hear a lot about it because of the Syracuse mayoral race, and we heard about it in the fall of last year, has been this issue of what to do with I-81 and whether or not to do a grid, knock it down, all types of issues. Many town supervisors and elected officials in Cayuga County have a concern that if you go to a boulevard system in Syracuse, that truck traffic that may be going to Seneca Meadows or maybe going to the Thruway are going to go through, again, Skaneateles or up 41A. Is that a concern you have?
Yes, it is. I have read generally in the Syracuse paper about these different projections for 81, and I have to say the boulevard looks nice, and Syracuse could use some nice looking areas like that, but there have been a lot of objections to it. I personally do not have a position if they should put in the boulevard, which frankly I don't think they will. But if they should, they have to somehow reroute the truck traffic and the fast traffic. Otherwise, people are going to be going 90.
Well, it'll also be 90 miles an hour.
Yes.
90, okay, not Route 90. They're going to head to Route 90,
yes.
but they're also, so you, whether they go with boulevard, tunnel, another overpass, whatever they do, they have to make sure that they're not routed through Skaneateles and 41A.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And it's actually it's only fair to the people taking 81.
So in talking to, we've had on the show Ed Wagner, who represents Owasco.
Yes.
We've had on, before this, George Farenthold, who represented parts of the Wells area around Aurora and Ledyard. Their concern was truck traffic, that is trash truck traffic.
Yes.
Is that the major issue through your area?
My biggest concern is the tearing up the roads, and we certainly have other trucks besides trash trucks. But I would say, you know, I can't really tell you. I'd have to.
You just
look at
see them
study.
and you hear them.
I see them and I hear them, and they are. There are other reasons why they're not so good, but basically we need better roads. We need faster road repair. The state, I just wonder if the state didn't have a list and at the very bottom was Cuba County.
So, so on the issue of the roads, did you get much? I'm getting there. You'll see why in a second. Did you get much damage where you live with the heavy rains 2 months ago?
We did not.
Okay, so but Moravia did.
I was in Moravia.
Okay.
I was in Moravia several times, like after one of the big storms, and then there was another storm. It was amazing.
So the county had to act in that particular case as well as other organizations.
Yes.
In your view, did the county act quick enough when the storms hit and what needed to be done?
I saw people out all night. I saw I saw volunteers, and I saw county people and town people. I saw everybody just really pulling their weight. And when I was going door to door, telling people about my candidacy, I asked some people, how was the emergency response? What did you think of it? And everybody said good.
Should the county have done more?
I can't tell you if there's some things the county should have done more or better, but I can tell you the feedback I got was good.
So this is where I'm getting to the roads issue. So Chairman Batman was on about 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the budget. He said that about $1 million we spent to address the stormage damage down in that area. Mm-hmm. Most of it around, I think, roads and culverts, he said. So it's mainly highway issues. Could the county be doing more other than just roads and culverts? Or do you think that's a local responsibility?
I think, well, the county has done more. For one thing, we're putting out a guideline for municipal maintenance of roadside ditches, which... Here,
I'll hold it up while you talk about it.
All right, thank you. Which gives the town some guidelines on maintaining those ditches, especially the vegetation in the ditches. You don't want a muddy ditch.
So this is not, when you say we are putting that, this is the Cuba County Water Quality Management Agency, which you're a member of.
Right.
Okay.
No,
not you as a Democratic candidate. Okay.
No.
So this goes to a bigger question, and we can slice and dice it a couple ways. What should be the role of county government? You know, they get a lot of mandated items from Albany and Washington. So cut those out because you don't get a choice.
Right.
What's the role of county government?
I think the role of county government is to help the other governments, the towns, the city, and there is now a proposal, and I think it's partly been enacted for shared services, and I'm very much in favor of that.
So the governor has mandated shared services.
Yes.
And I know that the Joni Mahoney in Onondaga County has released a report. Chairman Batman and this county is going to wait some time because they're allowed to under the rules. Where do you see areas where the city, the towns, and the villages can share with the county?
One thing is equipment sharing. Another thing is personnel sharing. Also purchasing, like purchasing pools.
So do you see a difference between shared services and consolidation? Or to you, are they the same?
To me, consolidation would mean a different entity.
So let's talk about two that have been talked about. One is we have a town assessor for every town here. The question has been, do you need that many assessors, or can we go to a county-wide system? What would you prefer?
I have heard some of the arguments on that, and some people say that with the town assessors, different assessors do things slightly differently, and it would be better to have things standardized, and that makes sense to me.
So you would be for a county-wide system?
Yes.
So the city wouldn't have its own and all the towns?
Yes.
Okay. How about highway departments? We also have, there was a candidate here last week, last week, I'm trying to count which days I'm in, last week who said, you know, he gets constituents who basically say, I see the state, the county, and then the towns all going over the same road at some time, and my voters say, why? Do you see a need for consolidation of highway departments?
That's a tricky one. I will say that it's possible that the state guy has to go on a town road to get where he's going. He might not actually, for instance, be doing the plowing, but he has to get someplace in order to
drop the plow.
To drop the plow. I don't believe the state plows many roads in Cayuga County. I think they contract with the county to plow them. And also, and the town's contract. So there are contractual relationships. Frankly, I don't see that much duplication. And I lived a long time in Illinois, which doesn't get the snow that it does here, but occasionally we get some pretty bad storms. And New York gets an A+ in my book for plowing.
Okay. You talked about roads. Let's talk about the other issue you brought up. There has been an issue of what's causing blue algae in not only Wasco Lake. We mentioned that Skinny Atlas Lake, which is now getting blooms, also is part of the district that you would hope to represent. Do you have an idea of where you think this blue algae is coming from?
I believe that we need to do more testing and more data collection in order to really pin down the problem. Several years ago, I went to a scientist who is a member of the Skinny Atlas Lake Association, and I said to him, I know that Skinny Atlas Lake doesn't have a blue-green algae problem now, but are we worried about the future? And he told me there aren't enough nutrients in Skinny Atlas Lake to support a bloom. So no, we shouldn't worry.
Do you think?
And look what happened.
So now that you, I'll get back into the county in a second. Now that it has occurred in Skinny Atlas, do you think this will get much more state attention?
I hadn't looked at it that way, but it very well might. In fact, when I think about it, I think it will.
So you mentioned data,
Yes.
collecting data.
Yes.
Is there a role the county should be playing beyond data in this process?
Well, I think there's a list of things the county should be doing and is doing. First of all, they have to monitor the lakes. Secondly, early warning that there's a bloom. Thirdly, test the bloom to see if it has the toxins in it, the mycocystins. Fourth, warn people that there are mycosystems and test. You have to test the water treatment plants where the water comes out to make sure that it doesn't have mycosystems in it.
So when you say alert the public, there's been a question at the county level about, so for example, if you're in a school district, I live in the Auburn School District, and Jeff Perizzola, the superintendent of schools, gives me all types of rings on my cell phone when they're making an announcement, whether it's a snow day, even when I didn't have a child in the school district, or they're doing some event. Should the county, there's been a question about whether the county should be using that type of reverse 911 system for alerts. Do you think they should?
I think it'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Yes.
Where do you get your drinking water?
We get our drinking water from a well.
So do you have any worries about blue algae in the well?
No.
No.
I haven't never heard any concerns about that.
So an expert on this issue 2 weeks ago told me this was a lake-wide event where we've had these blooms there. How do we prevent them in the future? What steps would you like to see taken?
Well, first of all, we need to get to the root of it. We know what causes blue-green algae, but we don't know in these what confluence of events causes these particular blooms. So it's a factor of temperature. I mean, you're going to have the algae. It's the blooms that are the problem. So it's a combination of temperature, nutrients coming into the lakes, whether the water is clear, whether there's still water as opposed to wind.
So let's go back to your second item, and that is nutrients in the lake. And so traditionally there have been two causes, two groups that have been thought to cause more nutrients in. One is we pave a lot of space in our communities.
Sure.
We're not, if you go back 50 years, there wasn't that much, everybody from extending a driveway to larger houses where you've got some of these McMansions that the water just has to go somewhere and the nutrients have to go somewhere. So one's development. The other has obviously been this issue of agriculture, and there's been some great criticism, great in the sense of large, not great as in positive, criticism of these large consolidated farms, better known as CAFOs. Should they be better regulated?
Well, from what I understand right now, they are asked to conduct best management practices, which theoretically should limit the nutrients going into the water. And you know, we should take a look at those best management practices to see, if in fact they were followed, they would work. Do I believe that the farmers should be required to follow those practices? I would say yes, unless there's some compelling reason against it.
So for your, as you know, in a watershed, while the locality may be responsible, they can't regulate a whole lot. They
Right.
can't change rules and regulations.
Right.
Much of that has to come from the state of
That's
New
right.
York. Do you think, because again, whether it's skinny atlas or now we've heard most of the Finger Lakes have some type of blue algae, maybe not as far east as Cayuga, that there will be more regulations coming from Albany on whether it's development or agriculture?
I don't know about development because it is so local. I don't think in Cuba County development is really a culprit, but here again, I'm not talking about data, I'm just talking about my perceptions. In terms of regulating agriculture, I think the farmers are making some efforts to self-regulate. And I have talked to farmers who say, I do this, I do that, I do this.
But they're also taking a more aggressive role in the sense I've seen full-page ads in the Citizen, which are agricultural based, to say, hey, we're not the contributor here.
Yeah.
There's a much bigger picture here. Are you surprised that they're finally taking a stand with paid advertising?
No, I'm not surprised. Frankly, I'm glad they're at the table.
Let's shift gears away. There's some other items that the
Okay.
county has. If you're elected, is there any specific committee you would like to sit on?
Well, yes, I've looked at some of the committees. The Judiciary Committee kind of stands out because I was a lawyer, was a practicing lawyer.
What was your specialty?
I did civil litigation, I did stockbroker liability, employment law, and I represented small and medium-sized businesses, contractual disputes,
Okay.
kind of thing.
So judiciary is one you're looking at. Anything else?
Ways and Means is always interesting, but they might save that for people with a little more experience.
Okay. Well, I think we have a first termer right now as chair of that. The only other woman in the body right now.
That's
so,
true, Aileen, yes.
Because she had been moved up.
Yes.
Have you been to meetings of the legislature?
I've been to a Ways and Means Committee meeting, and I watched a meeting of the entire legislature online.
Okay. The county is right now in the middle or maybe near the end of a search process for a county administrator. First of all, do you support the idea of a county administrator?
Yes.
Is there any, so you've been here about 11 years, you said?
Yes.
During your time here, there have been 3 county administrators.
Yeah.
So some might say that system has got a problem, or the way it's designed. Are there any changes you would make to the job description?
No, not necessarily. I think the new job description, I think, is emphasizing that the legislature makes the policy and the county administrator administers it, and the chain of command is very important.
So they're going through the process right now of doing the interviews. They may be down to 3 or 5, depending on who you talk to. Should the legislature wait till after the elections because there will be at least 2 new members of the legislature. You're running for an open seat. There's an open seat for Mr. Reginelli's seat, which is in the city at least. Should they wait till after Election Day before picking a finalist?
I don't know, because I can think of reasons for and against. The reason for would be to get someone on the job. The reason against would be that they would have the input of these 2 new people, including me, who did employment law.
Okay. Here's a somewhat of an organizational question for the legislature as well. If the Democrats maintain control, as I said, it's 8-6-1, 8 Democrats, 6 Republicans, 1 Democrat. If Chairman Batman were to seek re-election and he wins his own re-election, we hear there's a write-in candidate against him,
Yes.
would you support him for another term?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And while officially there are not term limits in the legislature, because while they agreed to them many, many years ago, they were deemed illegal, or at least ruled that way. Would you stick to a 3-4-year term rule, as most of, if not all of the legislature is doing now?
I think that's sensible.
The legislature is also looking at its own space and whether or not they have a building that most likely the maintenance plan for the county office building, I've always suggested, has been baling wire, duct tape, and twine. There's some real significant issues at Genesee Street. What would you like to see done with the county office building?
Well, first of all, I think we should give awards to some of the people who have to work there. And secondly, I would like to see a new building. It doesn't have to be a brand new building.
Would you like to keep it in downtown Auburn, or
Very much.
Okay.
Or at least near downtown Auburn.
Out of left field, we're asking this of everybody who's running for office or who's an elected official. Next month, voters will get to decide whether or not to have a constitutional convention. You're against it. Why?
I'm against it. The Forever Wild clause is in danger. I don't want to see the Adirondacks opened up to drilling. Teachers and other unions don't want the legislature to change their pensions. It's going to cost a whole lot of money, and voters won't have the input they would for individual amendments.
So I play the devil's advocate with everybody who answers one way or the other. So let me give you the one side. Do you think that New York State as a government is broken right now?
No.
Okay. Supporters of, even of an opponents, harsh opponents of the Constitutional Convention say, even if you had Forever Wild and the pension issue, it would still have to go to voters in the end because they get a bite at the apple. Isn't it best to put it before the voters rather than leave it up to the legislature?
Well, it has to go through the legislature. It depends on what the change is. If the change is constitutional, the legislature can't change it. Okay? If the change is not constitutional but by law, I say if you don't like the way the legislature is voting, elect different people.
Okay. Where can voters find more out about you? You have an event, you have a meet and greet, or was that already?
I have, oh, thank you. I have
I read the paper occasionally.
I have a meet and greet in Moravia at 90 South Main Street, the home of Janet and Paul Nelson, from 4 to 6. And it's Saturday.
Saturday.
October 28th.
Okay.
Yes.
The 28th.
Yes.
So this will play a couple of times, and people can. Do you have a website or anything they can contact you email-wise?
I don't have a website. I do have an email. It's on that card.
Okay. I'll let you read it.
All right.
We'll find it quicker.
Okay. It's a new one. So GORR, G-O-R-R, 4, number 4, CCL at yahoo.com.
All right. We do want to thank our guest today, Kathleen GORR, who is running on the Democratic Independence Party as well as Fix Our Roads Party, for joining us today. We're sorry Mr. Ripley could not join us today, but we wish you well on the campaign trail, and more importantly, thank you for running. It's not always an easy task, and be safe out there. We will be back in just a moment with Beyond the Front Page, featuring an update on the Cuba County United Way. We'll have Ray Bazzari, who is their campaign chair this year, as well as Danielle Ambrose from the E. John Gavra Center, who's one of the agency directors. We'll be back on Thursday with the candidates for the 4th Legislative District, which is Grant Kyle, who is filling the seat for Mark Farrell, who resigned about a year and a half ago. He is being challenged by Chris Petras. Next week we concentrate on the city legislative races. The first one will be Elaine Daly versus Mr. Lesh. That is for a open seat that we mentioned that is being vacated by Frank Reginelli, who is not seeking a second term. By the way, that will be followed by a Beyond the Front Page, where we'll focus on Cayuga Reads with Kate Clifford Larson, who is the author of a well-known biography of Harriet Tubman, as well as the Seymour Library's Lisa Carr. That will be followed on Thursday by our final legislative candidates, and that will be the race where Timothy C. Lattimore is seeking a third term to the county legislature. That is a district within the city of Auburn, and he is being challenged by Mr. Nadzo. We'll finish off on Halloween with our city council candidates. All four will be here, including incumbents Debbie McCormick and Terry Cuddy, as well as their Republican challengers, Adam Miller and John Camardo. We'll be off Election Day, and we'll return to our regular season of programs. Once the election is over, we'll have everyone from Senator John D. Francisco in the studio to Brian Durant, the president of this college, to give a college update, as well as Lisa Green and Jeff Parazola of the school district to talk to us about foundation aid, as well as recognizing the 30th anniversary of Hospice of the Finger Lakes, and finally a show on the Shines Theater. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. I want to thank you for watching. We hope you stick around for the Beyond the Front Page in just a moment, but otherwise we'll see you back in the studio on Thursday with our race for the county legislature. Have a good evening and have a great tomorrow.